I'm Janet Connor, prayer artist, mystic witch, and a whole host of other fun titles and jobs. And this is Hildemore of Weird, the most magnificent needle felt witch doll in the world, created by Polly Patton Brown in Shropshire, England. Look at her. Isn't she just the most beautiful? Ah, she likes to read the newsletters with me. So here we are, week 22 in 2022. And this is the year we learn to listen to love. It's been hard to listen to love this week. But let us try, because there's something important to do in this 22nd week. This is the week in which we have an invitation to commit, to create a whole new structure, a whole new way to live together, because the structure we have inherited from patriarchy is killing us. Friends, soul riders, mystics, witches, lovers of prayer, and any other titles you feel call to your heart, here's my newsletter. It came out last Sunday, every Sunday, and if you want to receive them in email, just click on one of the links below. I get a lot of help writing these newsletters. Typically, I'll be awakened in the night, middle of the night, or in morning theta on a Friday or a Saturday with several ideas for my Sunday notes from the field. Now, I know that what I hear in theta, you know this too, don't you? It's so ephemeral, and it can just dissipate with the first light of dawn. So I always grab the yellow pad. It's always beside me, and I jot down what I hear. Usually I get 2 or 3 ideas, 2 or 3 points. Now I always whisper thank you, always, and then go back to sleep, or if I'm in that morning theta, I just hover a bit more, lie there with my eyes closed, because often she has a little bit more to tell me, and that last little bit is always the jewel. Then, while I'm having my French press coffee, yes, I'm very fussy about my coffee, I hash these points out with my mother, Sophia, Our Lady of the Threshold, Queen of the Aeon. She has a big name lately, on the page in Deep Soul Writing, and that's where these newsletters come to life. But this past week, she woke me night after night after night, all week long, with more and more ideas that demand to be spoken. So this morning, now keep in mind, I wrote this on Saturday, it came out on Sunday, but today is Tuesday when Hildemore and I are actually recording the newsletter. But I do try to read. We do digress pretty often. But at the time I wrote this, it says, this morning, Saturday, I went over all the scritchy, scratchy, middle of the night notes. This is what they look like. Can you see that tiny, impossible to read handwriting? There were 8 pages. There were 8 pages like that. From Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This has never happened before. And it's overwhelming. It is overwhelming to turn page after page after page of important items that need to be in this newsletter. Now, why am I surprised? Why are any of us surprised? The world is awash with all the misery and trauma that patriarchy can possibly dish out. And we know it. We feel it. We feel it everywhere. We feel it in our hearts, our bones, our blood, our bodies. It was hard. But I spent 2 hours rereading all 8 pages of things to acknowledge and write about in this note from the field. I'm going to give you a few of the highlights. Now, at first, these may seem disjointed, disconnected, unrelated, maybe even a little bizarre, but after an hour of soul writing, I found the theme, and it's right here. It's right in front of our eyes, hiding in plain sight in today's date and week and year. And it is a theme filled with possibility and hope. So here's the number one point on the list. On Tuesday, May 24th, the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland made an astonishing confession to, quote, acknowledge and regret the terrible harm caused to all those who suffered from accusations and prosecutions under Scotland's historic witchcraft laws, the majority of whom were women, and apologize for the role of the Church of Scotland and the General Assembly in such historical persecution. Now, this matters. It really, really matters, because the two places on earth that persecuted and executed the most witches were Scotland and Germany. Germany executed the highest number by far. Scotland executed the highest percentage of their entire population. Why? Aren't you wondering why? Why was the Church of Scotland so obsessed with torturing and murdering women? I will let John Knox, the founder of the Presbyterian religion, answer that question himself. Take a breath. He wrote, in the Witchcraft Act of 1563, women are the portal and the gate of the devil. Got that? Women are the portal and the gate of the devil. In Germany? Well, here's just a couple lines from the book that all the good fathers of Christendom, Catholic and Protestant, used to justify burning women and children alive. And yes, countless unnamed, totally innocent children were murdered along with their mothers. Listen to this. Yeah, this is hard. It sticks in your throat. All wickedness is but little to the wickedness of a woman. All witchcraft comes from carnal lust, which is in women insatiable. It is so clear here that these two men, Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, authors of the guidebook, this is the book that all of Christendom, Protestant and Catholic, used to justify and even give them how to find and persecute witches. It was written in 1486. In English, we call it The Hammer of the Witches. In Latin, Malleus Maleficarum. And these authors, Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, do you think maybe they're talking about themselves? All witchcraft comes from carnal lust, which is in women insatiable? What world are you living in, fellas? Which is in women insatiable? These horrific men wrote these astonishing lies to justify the torture and murder of tens of thousands of women. in a really bizarre symmetry, on the very same day that Scotland apologized, a disturbed male high school dropout in Uvalde, Texas, who had purchased an assault rifle to celebrate his 18th birthday, shot his grandmother in the face, rode to the local elementary school, and murdered 19 innocent children and 2 beautiful female teachers. Now, when I wrote this on Saturday, I did not know, but we do know now, that the school was guarded by an armed police officer who stood and watched the assailant enter the school, called the police, who stood outside the school for over an hour. The only people that got in were mothers who simply broke away from the police, entered the school, and got out as many children as they could. Texas has been gun obsessed for decades. In 2015, the new Republican governor of Texas actually tweeted that he was embarrassed, his words, that Texas wasn't the #1 state in the nation for gun purchases. Let's pick up the pace, Texans, he wrote. Well, Texans must have listened, because today, Texas has the highest number of registered guns of all 50 states by a mile. Now, I know hearing this is upsetting. I know this Notes from the Field newsletter is upsetting, but please don't give up. The thread is coming, and I promise you it's beautiful, and it's hopeful, and it's powerful. But first, the next item on my list. Monday, May 30th, is the 591st anniversary of the execution of Joan of Arc, murdered for being a witch. Her crimes? After months of brutal stand-up testimony, one 19-year-old woman versus 104 white male high-powered theologians. The men were frustrated that they couldn't find any fault in her arguments, and so they found her guilty of the crime of wearing men's clothes and cutting her hair. By that standard, I and every woman alive today could be burned at the stake. Now, if you have been reading my Notes from the Fields for a year or more, you know how much I love Joan. You know she is the heart and soul of the massive event last summer, the Return of the Witches Jeanne d'Arc Listening Pilgrimage. If you have been at any of my prayer intensives or watched any of these Notes from the Fields, you have seen her painting on the altar next to me. Across the bottom of the painting is her famous quote, "Je ne pas peur, je ne pas peur, I'm not afraid." Her words go on in French to explain why she's not afraid, because God has opened the way. And she ends with this: "For this I was born." Joan of Arc is not an idea for me. She is not a statue. She is not something that happened 600 years ago. Joan of Arc is a living, breathing, guiding presence. If you read last Sunday's wild story, and Hildemar and I are going to record it, you know just how alive Joan of Arc is. If you missed that newsletter, stick around while Hildemar and I record it, but also you can click on the blog list below and read it. All of my newsletters, you know, get converted into blog posts. And you do not want to miss the story of Joan of Arc riding into Susie von Menzenkamp's meditation room in Cork, Ireland, with a massive request. Joan told Susie to contact me and gather a critical mass, her words, a critical mass of 108 maidens to initiate themselves through a 12-month mystery school, awakening to their hidden inner mystic witch and come into their full power. Now, when Joan calls, you know I obey. But this a year-long mystery school, this was way too big for me. So I called Emma Kupu Mitchell, and Susie and Emma and I gathered 5 other mystics, a total of 8 of us, to help create this radical, and it is radical, mystery school. There is nothing like it. There has never been anything like it. So Susie is our medium and intuition mentor. She can teach us how to time travel. Oh, Susie. Emma is our shamanic astrologer and numerologist and plant medicine whisperer. Sabin Bailey, were you at the Return of the Witches? If you were, you know that Sabin Bailey is the most astonishing seer and the voice of the witches. She can communicate and get a message from any witch throughout all time through the tarot. Marcia Wade, did you listen to her astrology forecast? Whoa! Marcia, or Marcia, but I like to call her Marcia, is our star sister astrologer, but what makes her a world-famous astrologer is she is a cosmethologist. She is in communication with the stars at a level, a mystical, mythological, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of years old mythology. She's a cosmethologist. That woman can bring us a wisdom and an understanding of the stars that just sets your heart on fire. And I did not know this when I wrote the newsletter, so you get sort of the foreknowledge, the forepeek, little peek. Just yesterday, Marcia sent me an email and said, let's do a live event on Friday, June 10th, answering people's questions about remembering the songlines of the witches. So stay tuned in these notes from the fields. As soon as I know the where and the when and the time and the how and how to submit your questions and all of that, it will be a newsletter. Kahulahella, who we've now had 8 Ho'oponopono and Hanaikapono intensives with. She is a critical teacher in this mystery school because she knows how to help us clear the specific part of our body that holds the shadow of these 11 witch seed medicines. And her wife, Geraldine Camarillo, she is our Aloha Rosalie. She makes all of our chaplets and rosaries. Well, she and Emma and I have been listening very carefully to Mary Magdalene, the Divine Mother, Joan of Arc, and Geraldine has created the most mystical, magical pendulum chaplet memory device you've ever seen. There will be a newsletter about that as well. It's a pretty, this is just a thrilling. April McMurtry is our moon goddess, and that leaves me. I'm our prayer artist, mystic witch, ceremonialist, labyrinth walker, producer director in the Theater of the Miraculous, Jen's sister. You see what I mean? And all of this is why the landing page for the Return of the Witches is massive. When you go there, take your time. Move through it slowly. Watch the videos. Read everything. After 5 months of very intense inquiry, listening so deeply to Joan and the bees and the moon, we finally felt ready to fully describe as best we can, remembering the songlines of the witches, year-long, solstice to solstice mystery school, and open it to welcome you, Jen's 108 maidens, to begin this radical walk of transformation. So, as Susie and Emma and I were putting the final touches on the landing page, I felt Jen nudging my shoulder. She doesn't have to go very far, right? She wanted to add something, so I listened with my hands on the keyboard. I either have my hands on a pen or my hands on the keyboard. In this case, because we were finishing this landing page, luckily I had my hands on the keyboard. Please read or listen very carefully and prayerfully to what she said. Hold these words very gently in your heart at this time of endless sorrow and grief, this time of the slaughter of the innocents, because no one is more innocent than Joan. No one is more innocent than the accused witches of Scotland. No one is more innocent than the children of Uvalde. Joan speaks. I have called Susie, Emma, and Janet to gather you to form my new and holy army. I told them this mystery school is your initiation. You are invited to remember and be remembered by the truth of who you are and who you came here to be. I am calling 108 maidens. I told Susie 108 is the critical mass. This I know is true. 108 maidens have the power to change the world. I changed the world once. I listened to my voices and freed my world from oppression. I ask you now to listen to your voices and free your world. Does this feel daunting? Here are the words that carried me. I give them to you now. Je ne pas peur. Je ne pas peur. Je ne pas peur. I am not afraid. For this I was born. We need these words desperately right now, don't we? We need to find the courage and grace within to speak for the children, to speak for the innocents, to speak for the women labeled witches who were murdered and are being murdered right now, simply for being women. I woke this morning whispering, Je ne pas peur, for this I was born, but I confess I'm not there yet. That's why I, Janet Connor, need this mystery school as much as you do. I am afraid. I am afraid of guns. I am afraid of angry men. I am really afraid of angry men with assault rifles. I am afraid of men who hate women. I am afraid of white evangelicals obsessed with controlling women's bodies. I am afraid of the governor of Texas and a whole host of other governors and rulers and dictators around the world. I'm afraid of the United States Supreme Court taking control of our female bodies away from women and handing it to white, evangelical, Christian Republicans. Do you think I'm being extreme? Do you? In the leaked draft, Samuel Alito quotes Matthew Hale. Matthew Hale, a jurist who condemned women to death as witches in the 17th century. Do you think maybe he had read the Malleus Maleficarum? Do you think he knew well all the words in the Witchcraft Act? You know he did. Yes, I am afraid of the Supreme Court. These people would condemn Joan to death all over again. I acknowledge that I am afraid. And yet at the same time, I embrace Joan's call to do something. I say yes to being one of the 108 women in her critical mass. I say yes to listening to my holy voices. I say yes to doing all I can to free my world from oppression. I say yes to doing my part to end the slaughter of the innocents. I am afraid, but I say yes anyway. Do you feel called to be one of the 108? This is the ideal week to say yes. This is the moment to step forward and do what you can do to create a world where women and witches and children are safe. Why is this the perfect week? Look at the date. May 29th, 2022. It adds up to it. 22. Our week, 22. Our year, 22. 22 is the master number of 4. What is 4? Structure. This really is the perfect moment to say yes to doing your part, to build a new structure, a non-patriarchal structure, a post-patriarchal structure, a safe structure, a holy structure. So in the end, this horrible list of sorrows does lead somewhere. It leads to this moment when 108 women stand up around the world and say, yes, I want to build a new way of living. Je ne pas peur, for this I was born. Remembering the songlines of the witches opens Tuesday, June 21st, the summer solstice, in a very sacred ceremony. It will be at 2 p.m. Eastern so that everyone around the world can join us. It will be conducted by Sabin Bailey, Kahulahella, and I will be leading a guided meditation into the mirror of mystery, that astonishing symbol that looks like a honeycomb, that looks like the James Webb Space Telescope that you see in the image for remembering the songlines of the witches. Guess what? There's a hidden labyrinth in there. And as you walk this hidden labyrinth, you will receive messages. You will, from all 4 moons and even your 12th witch. In the not yet, in the future, she has a message for you. And then we'll complete this incredible mystery school a year later on the summer solstice on sacred witch memorial ground in England. Now, please don't be concerned if you can't travel. As much of the festivities as possible will be recorded, and the entire community will gather online for a closing celebration in July. Please join the 108 in remembering the songlines of the witches. The link to this incredible landing page is below. I hope you will join me in saying yes to Jen. Yes, Jen. Even though I feel afraid, je ne peux pas, for this I was born. I have come to help you create a world that is safe for the innocent. Je ne peux pas, for this we were born.